Welcome to this week's Who the Folk podcast. I'm Lonnie Goldsmith, the editor of TC Jewfolk. This week I talked to Laurel Hood, a candidate for the school board in St. Anthony, New Brighton Independent School District 282. We talk about what led her to run for office, what she's heard from her potential constituents, and how her Judaism helped bring her to this moment on this week's Who the Folk podcast. But before we hear from Laurel, be sure to check out the refreshed TC Jewfolk merch store with newly designed stickers, shirts, hats, and tote bags that help support our mission and help you look fun and stylish. Check it out at tcjewfolk.com/store. Laurel Hood, welcome to the Who the Folk podcast. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Very excited to talk to you. It is election season. You are a candidate for the St. Anthony, New Brighton School Board. The elections are, as people are listening to this, just about a week away is Election Day. I guess, how are you feeling as we are now firmly in the stretch run of election season?
Thank you for asking. I am feeling optimistic. Okay. I did receive the endorsement from our teachers union, so that was a nice nod, getting recognition from the teachers as well as SEIU. So the teachers and staff both endorsed me. And I think we have a really strong bench of candidates. There are 4 candidates for 3 seats. So I really feel we're in one of these lucky school board races, might I say, where the candidates we've all spoken together. We all kind of agree on fundamentally similar things. And I'm not terrified about the direction of our schools.
Okay, that's good. That's good, because I know a lot's been being made in other districts we've written about and in other states where your things aren't so lucky. But I guess in cases like that, where there's a degree of alignment, shall we say, where you're all at least collegial, how do you stand out? How do you differentiate yourself in a race like that?
That is a really great question. And one of the things that I have really brought forward is my children are on the younger end of entering the school journey. So my kids are in preschool and first grade. In the St. Anthony School District, the school district encompasses preschool all the way up to senior high.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It really is. It's a subtle plug to all of you listeners looking for a school district. But that said, we are really in it we're in it for the long haul. I'm getting to experience the beginning of this elementary education, and with my daughter in first grade and my son in preschool. And I really want to be able to support them and the rest of the community all the way up through high school and beyond. So I'm bringing a little bit of a different perspective. And what I've heard from a lot of the residents is they really like that. They like that I am one of the newer residents. In St. Anthony, we kind of joke that I've lived here for 7 years and therefore I'm still incredibly new. For those who don't know, St. Anthony is a very small suburb, population 10,000, kind of sandwiched between Northeast Minneapolis and Roseville. When I say I live in St. Anthony, some people think, oh, St. Anthony, Maine. That's
Maine, right. What a cool neighborhood in Minneapolis.
Cool neighborhood.
Yes.
Or if you live on the St. Paul side, you think it's St. Anthony Park. Nope. We're our own school district. We have our own police department, our own fire department. We're tiny little town. So I'm really glad to be bringing the perspective that I'm getting a lot of feedback from families. They like that I have some of the younger age kids, and I work in comms. So one of the things that we're hearing from a lot of residents, as well as teachers and the board itself, is the district can do a better job of communicating. That's not a secret. I think communications is often that unsung hero in a lot of cases. And how do we ensure that some of the really good work that the district is doing is understood by the parents and really understand what this means as the direction of the district and what it means for their students. So that's one of the other things I'm hoping to bring.
And I think when parents understand, speaking as a parent of a recent high school graduate and a current high schooler, like when parents understand, it's a little bit easier to buy into the vision of a district.
Exactly. And I will say our district is doing something pretty unique. We have made a shift to more of a more inclusive form of curriculum.
Okay.
So the school, the elementary and the middle school no longer have A through F grading. It's now proficiency-based grading. So this is really looking at, let's say, I'll give the example of 7th grade math. If you test at a proficiency level in 7th grade math, then you have the opportunity to opt into 8th grade math. So you can start excelling beyond where you're currently at, or what the grade level indicates you currently should be. But let's say you're not yet at proficiency, then you have time throughout your week to spend extra time with teachers and get that extra help. So all in theory, this is awesome.
Right.
Yet this is a big shift.
Sure.
So I think one of the things that the district has done, I recently sat in on one of their working sessions with the school board. For those who don't know, all school board meetings are open to the public. All their working sessions are open to the public. So if you ever want to know what's being done, just go to the meetings. So I just sat in on one of the meetings and to really understand what would I be getting myself into and what are they trying to do. And it was the meeting right before MEA weekend. And they talked a lot about how they're going to be using the working sessions of MEA to help bring teachers along in this process and really preparing them for this next wave of proficiency-based grading.
You know, it's funny. I spent a lot of years early in my journalistic career in Minnesota covering school board meetings. And it's interesting to see. I mean, first of all, yes, they're important to go to because they help you really get an understanding of the work that's being done in the community. Because even if you don't have kids in the schools, like the schools still affect your community. But also that you're hoping to start in on this journey as an elected official with kids so young, because I am used to school board members either being later career or, you know, recent retirees, people who aren't quite as, you know, young or have kids still at this stage in the school journey. So I think it's an interesting time to try to jump in at something like this.
I do too. And one of the former school board members from a few years ago, I won't share any additional information because you don't want to tell somebody how old they are.
No,
remind somebody. But one of the, like, a school board mentor of mine, because I think it's so important to understand not only what's currently happening, but what has happened. One of the previous school board members from a few years ago started out at the same time. And he told me his kids were right around the same age, and it really allowed him to bring kind of a fresh perspective and new ideas that he didn't see happening at the board previously. So there is precedent for this happening, but you're right. It's often people who are maybe kids have graduated or are farther along in their journey than people with much younger kids.
Sure. So I guess let's sort of start going back a bit to when you first conceived of the idea. What was it that got you interested in running for school board in the first place?
We do have time, right? We've got like 30 minutes.
We got a little time.
So for those listeners who remember NIFTY, if they were involved in NIFTY, the North American Federation of Temple Youth, I was on the NIFTY regional board when I was in high school. I was the NIFTY Northern president. And while that may not sound like an introduction to running for school board, I have been involved in some sort of politics for a very long time. While I was the NIFTY Northern president, I was also the chair of the Duluth Youth Advisory Board. So then Duluth had 4 major high schools, and the mayor put together a council for youth from the 4 different high schools to really work together. We attended school board meetings, we attended city council meetings, we stood together in the corner in the pouring rain to try to help residents understand the importance of the referendum. And that allowed me to really see the power of working together. Duluth, if you're familiar, is pretty segregated across the east and the west side, yet the students were able to come together and see common ground and what was needed in all the different schools. And that really showed me the first introduction to actually serving in politics. I then went on to go to undergrad at Drake University. A big driver was the caucuses, because I wanted to get a feel for different campaigns and meet all the candidates and kind of see on the ground what was happening. So I've wanted to do this for a while. And in the last couple of years, I've talked to members of our city council, our school board, residents to see what is the best place that I might be able to help change. And what I continue to hear from people is, school board is where you could probably make the most impact. And so really getting to understand and have a feel for what that meant took about a year to really dig in and understand, okay, these are the laws. This is what the school board actually does. And then this summer, right before the final date to put your name in, I made the decision, this is something I'm going to do.
As you've been campaigning around, St. Anthony, New Brighton, as you're meeting the community, what are some of the concerns that you're hearing from them about the schools that are things that you think you can help fix and get the proper attention?
One of the big things is what I mentioned is the more progressive, forward-looking, inclusive approach to education with the gone away or the A, B, C, D, F grading in elementary and middle school. And there's a lot of concerns about what this means. It hasn't yet, proficiency-based grading hasn't yet been brought into the high school. So a lot of people are asking, well, will our kids be able to go to college? Are universities even going to look at their transcripts? What does this mean? How is it going to work? The test scores of St. Anthony have gone down in math in the last few years. Our reading scores were in the top 5%, but test scores have gone down. So a lot of people are concerned about what this means. I think with any change, one of the big areas that we can do together is help communicate and explain the change and bring people along. And so that's where I'm hoping I can lean on some of my experience in communications to really, let's make sure the perspective of residents and concerns are really being heard. And so that way we can form our message and communications in a way that they will understand so they can be advocates with us, because we don't want to be working against people. We're all in this for the good of the students, the good of our community. And this is something that meaning the proficiency-based grading, is something that we're committed to. So now we really want to make sure that everybody understands how to support their students, how to prepare their students for how to be successful in this. So I would say that's one of the biggest things that I've heard.
I think a lot of the concerns with test scores, I think, at least it would seem to me, stems from how kids were educated for a lot of COVID.
Correct.
And I think there was a lot of lagging behind, because as much as, the kids tried their best and as well as we as parents tried to help our kids in a lot of ways, you mentioned middle school math earlier. I started having flashbacks to trying to help kids in middle school math, and it's not in a good way. So it's, I think we're still digging out of that. And my sense is that it's going to be a little while before we know, fully what the implication of that was on the education.
You're so right. And I would say it's not even just the test scores, but it's also kids who were separated from each other for years. And our community went through some challenges with just physically being apart. This is not unique to us. It is unique in the way each of us feel. That is unique. But at the same time, this is happening across the city, across the metro, across the state. And one thing that I think is pretty unique about St. Anthony is our student population is about equal to that of the state. So state population, student population is about 42% BIPOC. The city of St. Anthony is 40. So
Okay.
we're a really good mix and representation of, I would say, like a microcosm of the state. And so when we're seeing things happening in other parts of the state, we really feel it here as well. So I think when you bring up the point of the pandemic having such a big impact, there was also civil unrest, and we had our own issues happening in St. Anthony, and none of that can just be dismissed. It's something that we're continuing to work through and support each other through. So I appreciate you bringing it up, because it's been something that I've also been trying to explain to people. Yes, our test scores went down, and while test scores are just one piece of how we determine success, success is also being able to work with people from different backgrounds. That's another form of success. But that we also are we're working through this post-pandemic reality, and we don't yet know what that means.
Right. I mean, I know the socialization of kids and just being apart from each other for so long. And it's funny, I'm talking to kids of different ages. Like it feels like every grade could make the case that theirs was the worst situation. The high school seniors who lost, the second half, the final part of their senior year, the high school juniors of, 2020 who, lost opportunities for take SATs or ACTs and to set them up for college. My youngest was a fifth grader, lost the end of elementary school. It's, I think every age in every stage could make a case that they sort of got it the worst in all of that. And I think there's a lot that we're still learning about how that's going to affect, kids down the road.
I wholeheartedly agree. And I think that's one of the, I would say, the benefits of taking a approach to education that really tries to look at making equitable for everyone. We don't want to have kids slipping through the cracks, and we want to be supporting the kids who are really excelling, continue to excel. We want to be giving kids the opportunity to find the areas that they really want to lean into. And especially knowing that we're living in this post-pandemic reality where there are going to be kids who are falling behind. We're seeing it. It's not a hypothetical. Kids are falling behind, and there are there are going to be repercussions. So what can we be doing to try to make it as supportive for every individual as we can?
Yeah, absolutely. What surprised you the most about being on the campaign trail?
Well, I was pleasantly surprised by how, I don't even want to say involved, but like committed people have been. I have been getting emails from just the other day, I got an email who said, I graduated from St. Anthony in 77. My wife graduated in 78. My kids graduated in 03, 05, 08. I am committed to this city, and these are my questions for you. And that's not unique. And I'm awesome. Getting that. It is awesome. It is amazing. And I should have known that living here for all of 7 years,
right?
Knowing the community, but it's really wonderful to see how committed people are to the schools, knowing that the schools are such a big part of who we are, and we're educating the next generation of leaders, and we want to make sure that we're doing right by them. So I think that's been the biggest surprise. Not even surprise, a pleasant surprise.
Right. Well, I think it does sort of underscore the fact that you've been there 7 years and you're still basically, new to the community, when you have people who are emailing you who graduated from there in 77 and 78, and their 3 kids graduated the high school. So yeah, I can understand how you would be considered a newbie still to the community.
I have a neighbor who's lived here for 15 years and she's still a newbie. So
right.
We've got plenty of time to learn.
Oh, absolutely. has there been any negatives on the campaign trail, or just in campaigning in general?
Really, this has been the nicest run campaign I've ever seen.
That's awesome. That's great.
It is great. We had a Meet the Candidate forum a few weeks ago, and it was a few days after the most horrific thing that has happened to the Jewish community in my lifetime. And it was a challenging time for me. But after the forum, the other candidates, we all spoke to each other. Some of them asked how I was doing. It was a very, very collegial experience. And there was not a sense that any of us were putting each other down. In fact, talking at the forum, there was a lot of, oh, to build on what Ben said, or, oh, Eric's point is really valid, or what Cassandra just said. And it was like truly something I've never seen before. Like too nice. We're too nice.
It seems sort of weird to say, like, if you don't win, at least the schools are in good shape. I mean, I don't think that's the case in every school district race that's happening in the metro area, but this feels a little bit different.
Truly, I feel so fortunate to be in this spot, and that's something I've talked to friends. Of course, I believe that as a candidate, I'm bringing a unique perspective and would be able to bring things to the school board that would be extremely beneficial. I'm also not fearful that our school district will be going in a direction that would not be supportive for my kids and the rest of the students of our city. So in that, I feel very fortunate. I've had people who I met, actually I met at a conference who I mentioned, a conference in California. So random place to meet in Minnesota. Yeah. But their question was, are you running in Anoka? And like, where can I support you? How can I support you? And I was like, oh no, I'm running in St. Anthony. Like, so there's this real fear in a few of the different communities we have around the metro. And it's sad, doesn't even come short to explaining how it feels that people are so worried about what could be the result of their school board race and what it could mean for their kids. It's very disheartening, and I feel to be in a very, very lucky position.
Does your Judaism, whether it's your Jewish values or how you observe or practice, sort of factor in how you campaign and how you've gone about this process?
It's almost as though, for me, Judaism is such a part of who I am. It's hard to think about, is my Judaism what is driving my decision-making, my view of the world? Because I don't know my life without Judaism. So it's, yes, I would say, yes, Judaism is part of what's driving my perspective, but it's hard to distinguish that from just who I am, because I don't have an identity outside of being a Jewish woman. That is part of who I am. So I think when we talk about Jewish values, I look at it as they are ingrained in me as much as my DNA.
And it makes all the sense in the world too. I did want to ask, as a first-time candidate, and for people who might be listening who may want to run for something, how do you start running for something? Like, how do you build an infrastructure? How do you do what you need to do to run a campaign at any level? Obviously, we're talking about school board here, but I think the lessons and the skill sets that goes into building an infrastructure could probably be replicated at a lot of different local levels.
That's a great question. I think one of the things that I did right away was spend some time talking to people outside of my district. I talked to former school board members in other districts. I talked to people who worked on campaigns in other races, and really understood, what does it take? Because you want to be going in this with your eyes open. You don't want to be thinking, oh, this is just an easy walk in the park, because it's not. It doesn't matter what type of race it is. It's not. And from there, when I let people know that I was interested, I received an outpour of support from people. How can I help you? What can I do? And I think there's often a tendency amongst some, myself included, to think I can just do it myself. You can't. You're going to need a team. You're going to need to have people you can rely on. And being able to say, I need help, and allow people in has been one of the best things that I've done in my campaign. So I helped establish some roles for my campaign, people who have designated this is what their responsibility is, so I can focus on the things that are important for me as the candidate to be doing. And then I'm not left responsible for all of the tiny little details, because there are going to be tiny little details.
And lots of them, I'm sure.
And lots of them.
That's really cool. Well, it's great that you've built this this operation, that you bring people in and you clearly have a message and a personality that is welcoming and wants to include people. So that's obviously a great start.
I would think so. Yes.
Well, Laurel, last couple questions and we'll let you get back to the campaign trail. First, what is your favorite Jewish holiday?
Man, it's like, what's your favorite child? How can one pick? I love to cook. So,
okay.
So by default, I have to pick the cooking holidays. I love hosting Seder. In fact, we often have a Seder that is kind of the mixture of friends who come, who want to experience something for the first time, and friends who aren't Jewish, and friends who don't have family in the area. So I look at it as we can always find room. We can always find tables. I just want a full house. So I think that for now, because it's so far away, I'll say Passover.
Awesome. And speaking of the cooking, what is your favorite Jewish food?
Oh, these are very, very hard. I think I'll do two.
All right.
Kube, the dumpling soup.
Yep.
I had it for the first time when I lived in Israel, and now I make a really mean kube soup.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And then I have to go Hamantaschen, but the good Hamantaschen.
Well, obviously the good Hamantaschen, but like
not the falling apart.
No, that doesn't work. Okay, no. Do you have a favorite filling?
Apricot.
Okay.
Hands down.
My wife as well.
A traditionalist.
Yeah, for sure. Laurel Hood running for school board in St. Anthony and New Brighton. Election day is coming up. It is next Tuesday, the 7th. If you haven't registered, it's Minnesota. You can register day of. So if you live in St. Anthony, New Brighton, School District 282, go vote. Laurel Hood, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate the time and best of luck.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
The Who the Folk podcast is a part of the Jew Folk Podcast Network and a product of Jew Folk Inc. Please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. If you have suggestions for other podcast guests, please email them to me at editor@tcjewfolk.com. For our other shows, check out tcjewfolk.com/podcast.